Hello and welcome to Wingin It. So for those of you who follow my channel for a while now, you'll know just how important picking a good starting hand is in a game of Wingspan. For me, it's the single most important decision that you make in the game, and it's definitely an area that I see newer players slipping up, making those mistakes that can really hamper your potential throughout the game. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through my general approach to picking a starting hand, some little tips and tricks for you to employ. And then we're going to go through a couple of scenarios as well. I'm going to explain my thought process, talk about what I would be looking to keep from those starting hands, and maybe you can share your views on those starting hands in the comments as well. We can get a good discussion going on which other birds to look for and which other ones to avoid. So before we get into those scenarios, I'm going to go through some of my tips for picking a good starting hand. Now, before I go through these, of course, I'm going to caveat this by saying these are general tips, so these are not always going to apply. There are always going to be exceptions to these, depending on what the starting hand looks like. But for me, I think these are good in the vast majority of cases, and particularly if you're a newer player and you're just starting to get comfortable with the game of Wingspan and you're looking to improve your decision making early in the game. I think these are going to be really good things for you to keep in mind and think about, so that next time when you're picking that starting hand, you can make sure you're really maximizing the potential of that start. So yeah, let's take a look at some of my basic tips. So for me, there's three key things that I'm going to be looking for in a starting hand. And the first of those is securing good card access. So games of Wingspan are won and lost based on the number of cards that you see. Of course, if you're looking at more cards, you're going to be able to find not only those cards that fit your engine and are going to help you set things up as you progress through the game, but also those really big point birds that you're going to be looking to play later in the game. So whether it's the form of a cheap wetland bird that can let you draw extra cards, or whether it's something like a Franklin's Gull or a killdeer, a white stork or a wood duck, these are the kind of birds that I'm going to be looking to keep for sure in a starting hand, because they're just going to let me see loads and loads of cards, and that is going to help me win the game. Next up, of course, it's going to be food access. So if you're going to be looking to play birds in the game of Wingspan, you are going to need food. And you're going to need to get that somehow. So whether it's the form of a cheap 1 or 2 food cost bird to put in your forest that comes with a good food gaining brown power, or maybe it's something like a raven or a crow that we all know and love that can go outside of the forest and help gain some food. Getting that food access is going to be critical. So definitely look for those cheap brown powers. Even if it's not food gaining brown power, of course, if you've already followed point number 1 and got your card access secured, a cheap bird in the forest will let you discard extra cards for food and get that little bit of extra food when you're taking the gain food action. So always worth bearing in mind, and helping to get yourself some more food early in the game. And last but by no means least, what I'm going to be looking for are some good engine birds to plan my game around. So this is kind of going to be a decision that I make based on the setup of the game. So maybe I'm looking at the end of round goals. Maybe I'm looking at my bonus card a little bit as well. But I'm going to be looking for those engine birds that's really going to help me depending on where I'm going for. So maybe I'm going for a forest engine. I'm going to be looking for birds that can cache food, or maybe just birds that gave me extra food so I can play big point birds as the game goes on. Maybe I'm going grassland, so I'm going to be looking for those egg-laying birds or those strong brown power activations that are going to help score lots of points when I run that grasslands engine. Or maybe I'm going wetlands, in which case I'm going to be looking for all of those tucking birds and just really look to get lots and lots of tucked cards in the wetlands. So depending on what I'm going for, depending on what options I'm given in my starting hand, I'm going to be thinking about those engine birds that are going to help me as the game progresses. Now, of course, when picking which of those birds to keep, there are going to be a few other things to bear in mind. So the first of those is looking at the food costs. So early in the game, generally, you're not going to have lots of food, particularly at the start of the game, of course. For every bird that you keep in your starting hand, that's 1 less food you get to keep hold of. So maybe you'll look to keep 3 birds, you only get to keep 2 food. So you're going to need to be able to get the birds that you keep down pretty quickly. And the best way to do that is only pick birds that cost 1 food, or sometimes even no food. Those can be really helpful early on. So look for those cheap birds and try to steer away from those 3 food cost birds. Unless they come with a really good brown power, that's going to hurt you early on, because you're going to use all your food and then you're not going to have any to play the other birds that you've got in your hand. Next tip is going to be to look for brown powers that give you off-habitat resources. Now, what do I mean by off-habitat resources? Well, for example, there are birds that can go in a particular habitat that give you a different kind of resource to what you'd normally gain there. So, for example, maybe you're gaining food in the forest and you have a bird there that's going to let you lay an egg as well. Or maybe you're laying eggs and you have a bird there that's going to give you food. You can get 2 different types of resources in one action. Particularly from a starting hand in the early game, being able to do that is so valuable. You're going to save yourself turns, particularly, as I say there, if you're getting eggs and food at the same time. That could be really valuable. So make sure you know how to recognize these birds, which ones you're going to be looking for. And yeah, if you get those in the starting hand, they can be a really good keep. Last tip before we get into some examples is to always look at the tray. Now, it sounds obvious, but I'm astounded by the number of times that I see newer players in particular not looking at the tray, especially when they're going first, because you're going to get first dibs on any of those birds. Of course, in your starting hand, you get 5 cards, but there are another 3 in the tray. So that's a 60% increase on the number of cards that you get to choose from when you're going first. And yeah, you don't always have a great starting hand, but you can normally count on something from the tray. So always important if you're going first, but equally, if you're going second, it's good to keep an eye on them because who knows, maybe your opponent is going to leave those and you're going to be able to get to grab that on your first turn. So always look at the tray and for sure consider that as part of your starting hand decision. So those are my tips for helping you pick a good starting hand and hopefully get yourself off to a good start in your next game of Wingspan. And we're going to look to employ some of those here in some scenarios. So we're going to jump here into a game against the AI. And yeah, we're going to take a look at our starting hand. And I'm going to talk through what I would be looking to do in this situation. So what have we got to look at here? Okay, we've got some good brown powers to choose from, lots of wetland birds, which that hits point number 1 that I talked about. Look to get your card access sorted, and for sure a bird like this great crested grebe, this is one of the best wetland options in the game. So draw a card for each empty card slot in your wetland as well. At the start of the game you're going to have lots of empty card slots in your wetlands, so for sure that's going to be really powerful. That's going to let you see so many cards. Of course, each time you're looking at 4 and then keeping the best of those. So lots and lots of cards to choose from. Now, looking at the tray, of course, we're going first here. So we're going to get first dibs on the tray. And we've got the black-headed gull, which, again, is another good wetland bird. But it also hits one of those other points I was talking about, getting off-habitat resources. So in this case, you're stealing food from other players, which is valuable not only for yourself, because you're able to gain food while you draw cards, but you can sometimes really cause havoc with your opponents by stealing that food that they were going to look to use on their next turn. So definitely a strong looking option there. We'll take a look at the bonus card as well. So we've got Historian and we've got Citizen Scientist. Citizen Scientist, definitely one of the worst bonus cards in the game, so I think Historian would be the one for me to keep here. And yeah, probably would just be the Great Crested Grebe, and then I might look to pick up the Black-Headed Gull as well. Now, one thing to bear in mind that I actually didn't talk about is sometimes the feeder can really make or break a starting hand. So, of course, this Great Crested Grebe, it needs 2 fish. Do we have a fish in the feeder? We do not. So that can sometimes, as I say, be a bit of a nuisance because you only keep 1 of each type of food. I can't keep 2 fish here as much as I would like to. So that is going to be a little bit costly, but who knows? Who knows? If I am going to try and use this black-headed gull, maybe that could potentially be a way of getting that little bit of extra fish. Or I could just overpay, of course. Whenever you play a bird, you could choose to use 2 any other food to replace 1 of the food costs. So yeah, I think I would probably be going for the food-heavy start, knowing here that with this Great Crested Grebe, I'm going to be able to get plenty of extra cards. And yeah, I think I would be going for that black-headed gull. Look to get that down as well. Start drawing some cards, start stealing some food, and see what the deck is going to give me. That feels like a pretty solid start. Okay, and on to the next scenario. We're going first again here. Let's see what we've got in the starting hand. And oh boy, we've got another pretty good one here. So again, lots of good wetland options here. For sure, any of these 3 would be great to keep at the start, particularly the yellow 3 and the Clark's Crew for me. These hit all of these points that I'm talking about. Good brown powers and only cost a single food as well. So really, really cheap to get down. And yeah, get yourself some cards. as well as you're activating that. Let's take a look at the tray. As I say, we're going first. So we are going to get first dibs here. And we've got the chipping sparrow. So again, another one of these birds I was talking about in my tips. An off-habitat resource bird, chipping sparrow. You can put that in the forest and you can start gaining eggs. So that's a really powerful bird. You just place that down in the forest, get yourself some food, and you don't have to worry about laying eggs because the chipping sparrow is going to sort you out for this first round at least. So that feels like I'm going to be picking that up pretty quickly. And yeah, to be honest, I think I'd probably be looking at keeping both the yellowthroat and the Clark's grebe. Now, we'll look at the bonus cards again because that can sometimes have an impact, and we've got some really good choices here. So, Zoologist, normally an instant keep, I think, particularly in a game like this where you've got a couple of end of round goals that are to do with egg laying. You're probably going to be doing some egg laying, and of course, if we go for that chipping sparrow, that's going to help us out with some egg laying. But Food Web Expert is also a pretty good choice here. We do have this yellowthroat that does hit the Food Web Expert, so already a couple of guarantee points there, and potentially even more because this kind of bonus card scales really well to points per bird. But for me, I probably would still keep the Zoologist here. Like I say, in 90% of games, I would say this is a pretty shoe-in 6 points, so that feels like a safe keep. And yeah, I think I would be going for the yellowthroat and the grebe. I think these are two really good birds. Once you get these two down in your wetlands, of course, you're drawing 2 cards from the draw cards action. The grebe lets you see another one, and the yellowthroat lets you see another 2. So you're looking at 5 cards a turn and then discarding 2. But that's just going to help you so much early on. You're going to see so many cards. And yeah, just really get yourself off to a good start. And then we've got that chipping sparrow. So any extra cards, we can discard this in the forest, get a little bit more food, and get some eggs as well from the chipping sparrow. What's not to like? So one last scenario here, and this one we are going second, so we'll see if that is going to make any difference to our decision making here. But let's take a look at the starting hands, and it's all very familiar. We've got the chipping sparrow again, so for exactly the same reasons as I was just saying, that's going to be pretty much an instant keep in this starting hand. And we'll take a look as well at what we've got in the tray. So very, very interesting option. And for me, I think this is definitely a case where going second is going to change your decision making slightly, because fish crow, in most cases, if you're going first, you're going to be picking that up. So we can take a look at our opponent here. In this case, the AI, they have chosen to keep a fish. And so that is going to give us a little bit of information. I think if they didn't keep a fish, I'd be expecting maybe they might leave that fish crow. But that does to me signal keeping the fish, that they're going to pick that up. So something for me to bear in mind. But to be honest, I don't really think I mind that too much, because we have also got this Eurasian nuthatch in the tray. So again, one of the tips I was talking about, look for what your engine is going to be. And I think in this scenario with chipping sparrow, such a good opening forest bird getting eggs, and Eurasian nuthatch, a really good pairing as another forest bird getting some cash food. This feels like it could be the start of a really good forest engine. So yeah, I'd be definitely looking to pick that up. Now, the real weakness of this starting hand, it doesn't hit our key point of getting card access. The only wetlands options, unfortunately, that we've got is this red-headed woodpecker. But, beggars can't be choosers. I think sometimes when you have any wetland birds, it's better than nothing. So, yeah, in this case, I think I would be looking to go for this woodpecker. And who knows, maybe it can get some extra cash food as well, or some more points. Now, we will take a look at the bonus cards, and sometimes that does change your mind. And I think in this case, Omnivore Expert really does for me sell this woodpecker. So yeah, ordinarily only 4 points, but of course, Omnivore Expert with a couple more. Nest Box Builder, arguably also a good choice here if we are going for the nuthatch. That's 1 in the tray, and then this woodpecker is another. So that could work out pretty well. But like I say, Omnivore Expert, this is one of the best bonus cards in the game. You're going to be keeping that in most scenarios when you have that in the starting hand. So yeah, I think for me, this is quite a straightforward one. Again, I think we keep the chipping sparrow. I think we can safely assume that the fish crow is going to be gone. But we might just keep a fish here just in case, because you never know what your opponent is going to do. And that does give us a bit of flexibility. So yeah, I think I'd be picking up that nuthatch. And yeah, we can then play the chipping sparrow. We can start getting some food. Of course, when we gain food, we're going to get an egg as well, which lets us play that nuthatch. And suddenly we've got a 2-point forest going on we can easily get the food to play this red-headed woodpecker and start drawing some cards. So yeah, this feels like a pretty good opening start here from this starting hand. So there we go. Those are some scenarios implementing some of my top tips for picking a good starting hand. Hopefully you found all of that useful. And as I said, please do let me know your tips in the comments. Particularly for those scenarios, was there anything you would have done differently? Would you have kept different birds? Would you have maybe looked to go for a different approach? Do let me know. I'm always interested to see discussions on the starting hands in the comments. But for now, thank you very much for watching. If you're new here, please do hit that subscribe button. I would massively appreciate it. You can check out plenty of other gameplay and strategy content here, hopefully to improve your ability at Wingspan. And yeah, I'll see you again very soon, hopefully, in another video here.